Welcome to the Monday Club in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. I'm Neil Loughran, and this week we're joined by former Armagh footballer Stefan Campbell. Okay, Cahair O'Kane is here as well, as always. Wouldn't be a Monday without Cahair sitting here, but you've swapped seats. You've given good grace by letting Stefan take...
You get the hair straighteners out.
Take the big one, please. So Stefan's going to be joining us every so often throughout the next couple of months as we look ahead to the rest of the campaign. But today, it's all about you, kind of. You'll love that. But even in the intro there, Stefan referring to you as former Armagh footballer, does that... we're a number of months down the line now since you made the decision. Does it sound weird that, or you've completely made your peace with it?
Yeah, I think I'm at ease with it now. I've obviously had a few conversations, a few interviews. I've obviously doing a bit of podcasting as well, and I found myself pinching myself at times, just being on the opposite side of the screen, I suppose. But no, I'm definitely comfortable with the decision that I've made a few months back.
And what does life look like afterwards? Because like so many people who finish up playing county football, and you're 34 now, I think now, it's probably trying to regain some of your life because it's an intense bubble to be a part of for so long. But have you managed that? Because you're involved with the Armagh 20s, you've plenty going on.
Yeah, look, I spoke to numerous players, who have maybe experienced similar, career paths. Obviously we're an intense environment. It's almost 7 days a week. If you're not there mentally, you're thinking about it, how you can prepare physically, and it can become that sort of 50 or 60 hour week. But the feedback that I got was that you need to fill the void, and that's what I've done. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think it was good to
give us the list of things that you've filled the void with.
Well, I've playing soccer for Loughran and Cahair, but I'm in with the club. Obviously back playing for Gael. We're involved in the Ulster League at the moment. I'm in with Armagh under 20s, and of a small window of 37 and a half hours there to try and fill with Armagh as well, so pretty busy. And
what's the 20s, was that something that you had always seen yourself getting involved with, or how did that come about that you got?
Yeah, so I was involved 2 years ago. I took them maybe for a 6-week block until maybe the schedule wouldn't allow for any further, obviously going into the county season. But I knew back then, leaving that group, that I was going to delve into it a wee bit further. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the response and maybe how coachable the players were, especially that age group. Now, I never seen myself going into the media side of things, but from 2 years ago when Bumpy asked me in, I knew I would pivot back due to the feeling and the buzz that I got off coaching, players at that age.
And see, when I'm wondering, whenever you make that call to step away, probably for a lot of guys, the natural part might have been after you win in All Ireland, but then it's nearly impossible, I imagine, to walk away in light of that. Was it something that, yourself, because there's quite a few of your guys around your sort of generation who maybe might have been in a similar boat, and some of them have since left, followed you. Were these conversations that you and those kind of boys might have been having for 2 or 3 years about what the future might look like, or about possibly stepping away? Yeah,
look, especially from, there's a lot of us spent a lot of time together, that sort of 1990 group. To be honest, we've been having them conversations from we were on the wrong side of 30. We probably didn't get that relative success in terms of the Ulster finals and the quarterfinals, etc., until our latter years. But them conversations were definitely being had. There was probably a wee bit of paranoia too that maybe we weren't good enough, which in hindsight sounds absolutely
What do you mean? As in not contributing as much, or what do you mean?
Probably because we've been there for so long and with zero success, and maybe it was just the aftermath of them defeats, maybe the rawness of it all, and thinking maybe we were the issue. Maybe we weren't good enough, and was it time for us to step aside? So them conversations were definitely being had in round, I would say, 22, 23-ish.
It's mad to hear that, because you were knocking right on the door at that stage.
Yeah, it was coming. Yeah, obviously the Galway game at Croke Park, it lights a fire inside you. So maybe them conversations are put to the side. Then the season ends and you're thinking, are we good enough to go back? And obviously you're brought back in maybe 3 or 4 weeks later after the season ending, and geezer's not long telling you that, you know, look how close we are, and there's 20%, you know, they do the postmortem and all their stats and you know, the figures and how close you are in terms of like maybe efficiency on the field, what we can do, what more we can do off the field. And it's no coincidence that, you know, you've seen that progression between 22, 23, 24 obviously, and then when we did get what we deserved in 24, like there may have been a few drunken conversations that, you know, could this be it? But realistically, no, because there's too good an opportunity. There was a realistic opportunity, we thought, for us to go and do back to back.
Was it hard though coming back after that? Like I wonder about, because you know it's obviously such a weight off the shoulders. Like, you know, to go and win All Ireland, like, which probably exceeded what a lot of people might have. Like Armagh were always in the conversation, but whether they would ever go and win All Ireland, probably people were looking at Ulster first, maybe as a stepping stone. Like when you do reach that stage, like, and you go back in the following year, like is there, you know, is there a difference in that? Did you notice any difference last year?
No, I think he got more of a bounce actually going into the 25 season. Obviously, you know, but even there, we all like a break. Do you know what I mean? And we did get that. We obviously had a couple of like a fundraisers planned and stuff. But we literally couldn't wait to get back. Geezer kept beating the drum that, you know, he always wanted us to emulate his side, that O2 team, to go do one better. And unfortunately it didn't work out, but for 55 minutes in the quarter final it did look like it was possible.
How much were you just motivated last year? Then we won in Ulster as well on top. You know, that felt like from the outside that was something new for you to focus on, as opposed to just going straight back to back All Irelands.
Yeah, look, maybe the boys might give a different insight or whatever, or repeat maybe a different conversation. But when we're meeting at that first meeting in 25, like it could have been September before we got the gym work. The talk was about the All Ireland again. It was. Look, and you take each game as it comes within that Ulster, and it didn't work out. We obviously were off from 3, but hopefully the boys can go one further this year. But the goal was the All Ireland at the start of 25 season, and then once you go to Corrigan, you get out of Corrigan, and then you have the semi final, and then get to the final. Like, it becomes the priority then. But for that group, we knew we were good enough because we had the flair, we had the quality, we had the management team in place, and then obviously it's the impact off the bench that we had, the depth that a lot of squads did struggle with. But for us, it was about trying to retain on All Ireland, as opposed to going out with the sole focus of getting that, you know, elusive, if you want to call it, Ulster title.
No, because the easy place to go is the fire dimmed, or the hunger wasn't there the second year, but you just went into that All Ireland quarter final against Kerry as favourites. Most people, Paddy Clifford wasn't starting, and for 40 minutes it was going pretty much right on track, and then the 15 minutes that happened, and it felt like up until that point everything was going okay for the year.
Yeah, it was going okay for the year until we were playing Galway and Breffni, and I decided to pop my hand, but it was a difficult time. But going back to the game, we were executing that game plan perfectly, and obviously Kerry being Kerry, like, their players found form when it really mattered. Like Shawnee was having a quiet year up until it. Paddy found another gear. David was David. You know, you can only keep him quiet for so long. And look, they did dominate the kick out and took over. We'd probably not see another 10, 12, 15 minutes like it, because maybe we were the guinea pig in that within the new rules. You know, now teams are going to find ways to prevent that sequence of events from happening again, you know, and trying to kill that momentum.
How hard is that to watch? I wonder, like, because you mentioned you injured your hand the game before and weren't able to play any part in that game, and like one of the like, obviously the game was gone in that period, you know, like the Kerry were so dominant, but that was around, whenever their period of dominance started, was the kind of time that you maybe might have been, coming into the fray or whatever, even during that, to try and offset things. What's it like sitting there knowing you can do nothing? Croke Park can feel really like a really lonely place in those kind of moments, I imagine.
Yeah, look, obviously in the aftermath of that, all you kept hearing was if you were fit, we could introduce you to break up momentum. But to be honest, I just think it happened that quickly that day. That
it was like a complete shock and awe, wasn't it? Yeah.
I don't think I'd have made a difference. Because one, I'm not great above my head, so I wouldn't have won any kickouts. We didn't get enough hands on ball to get it into me, on the final third anyway. So I think people might have been clutching the straws, or maybe hoping that maybe the Armagh fans maybe would have got on side and been louder and created that sort of atmosphere, and then the players might have responded off that. But if I'm being honest, I don't think I'd have made a huge difference that day if I was introduced maybe even in the 40th minute or 50th minute, whatever it is.
And see, just like a final point on kind of the moving on with your, with life and post intercounty football. Like, you have you been to any Armagh matches this year? Like, what's it like being a spectator on the other side of things? Like, do you feel a detachment from it, or?
Probably detached from the lads because I spent so much time with them over the last 10 or 15 years. I keep in touch with a lot of them. I don't like to ask too many questions just in case I think I'm,
nosing.
I'm nosing, and I'm, do you know what I mean? I'm maybe is this guy in the studio in Dublin here, the next couple of days. But no, I try and keep it, vague enough that you're just catching up.
Is that hard in itself? Because they're your friends, and then you don't want to have those conversations that you've been having for 15 years.
For example, go back to the Roscommon game. I noticed Andy Murnan walking off in the background with the doctor, and people maybe not in my position maybe didn't pick up on how serious that was because of the timing of the game, how dominant Armagh were in that kick out going down that stretch in the Hyde. And once I seen Andrew coming off, I know his injury record, that he's managed to get him and Julie and Mora had managed to get on top of over the last couple of years. And for him to be taken out of that game, I knew that was serious with the games coming up. And I wanted to text him to say, look, hopefully it's not too bad. Andy probably wouldn't text me back. So I'm training him in that. Because
I know what you mean now.
So the boys are just that way inclined that I don't want them thinking I'm fishing for other reasons as opposed to being, the friend that I would like to be perceived myself as. But it's them wee things.
It's a strange sort of grey
area. I need
area,
to keep my distance. But to answer the question about have I attended any games, no.
Is that a conscious decision, or just hasn't suited?
Probably schedule just hasn't suited. More so, we have spoken about going to maybe the Cahair game and potentially the Tyrone game, but I don't know. I'd just be afraid of maybe letting myself down too, because obviously I'm kicking every ball during the televised games, and I've spent enough time on the bench to hear what's going on behind, and then if I'm in the middle of that,
it'd be like Ian Wright in the studio.
not quite, but can I bite my tongue? Because fans are fickle, fans like to get involved. They pay their money, they're entitled to their opinion. I'm just afraid of maybe someone going too far and me not being able to bite my tongue because
you'll come to the defence of the players.
Yeah. So there's a wee bit of that.
Yeah.
Wee bit of that.
Because there's still that personal, obviously, as you mentioned, even with, because I'm sure some of the stuff you might hear on on any stand or any terrace is normally directed at managers a lot of time as well. It would obviously be you'd be protective nearly or defensive.
100%. And you can't maybe sit here and say certain players are maybe called out more than others. There's fans like to have their favourites too, and there's players just putting in just as much effort on that training field as the rest, and they tend to be the names released first. But it's probably more of a schedule thing, maybe conscious decision in both parts.
You mentioned time spent on the bench as well. I suppose that's an interesting theme of your career and how you got used to that role. That I don't want to say became yours, but it did in some ways.
Yeah.
Particularly, I suppose you're associated with it in the All Ireland year. Even though, like Neil pointed out to me last night, like you had started 5 of the 9 championship games that year, and yet
It wasn't until Galway that you didn't start, was it? Sure, wasn't it? I think you started all the games in Ulster and then the first 2 round robin games, and then Galway you didn't start.
And so that tag's maybe a wee bit unfair, and yet it is the tag, and it's a different role. How you get used to that in your own head.
It probably just wasn't a 2024 thing. I think I became accustomed to it's horses for courses, right? So let's go back to the start of a year, any year, particularly the last couple maybe, and I could almost handpick what games I was going to start, what games I was going to be kept back. Now, more often than not, you'd have seen me play, especially in 23, 24, you'd have seen me playing against the likes of the Antrims, the Fermanahs. There'd have been conversations around the Derrys, but because Derry like to go a wee bit more man-to-man, it suited my style. But definitely when we come up against the likes of Donegal, we come up against maybe the Galways, that's when the conversations would have been, you know, the higher quality teams, the Kerrys, that we trusted our defence to nullify and keep us in the game for so long. And look, it wasn't just me, obviously I get a lot of the credit, but we knew that if we could execute our game plan and our structure could keep us in the game for 45, 50 minutes, that there was potentially no team out there that had that firepower to cope with what we were ready to spring. But if you go back to 24, like I got opportunities. Like I'd say I dropped out of the team initially because of form, not because they were looking to hold me back. Like if you go back to that game, Cahair and Derry absolutely ripped Derry to shreds, and I was probably the only player on that field that probably didn't perform to my level. So then that's when the question marks do arise. They wouldn't take me out of a game, out of a campaign if I was performing and I staying in the team. But it was more if it dropped off, it was like Donegal's coming to town, you know, Galway is up next, and then the conversation would have arose. But I would say I didn't. If you're playing by form, I didn't deserve probably to play that game against Roscommon anyway. I was struggling for a wee bit of form, but after that, I can recall the training sessions we had between Roscommon and Kerry, and I was giving our boys serious baller, like, and to the point where.
Were you on the? So see, in the training games, are you on the B team in those? Because I remember talking to Aaron Mackay last year, and he said like there was a game a couple of days before the famous Kerry, quarterfinal, wasn't it? Or semi-final, sorry, in 24. And I said the B team absolutely roasted the A team, like, and I did think of you at that time. But was that?
Look, not sure exactly
what
What you scored?
2
They're not going to text you.
To be fair, and what comes with that role, being on the seconds team, obviously, if we're up against a Roscommon, a player of my probably characteristics or traits, attributes, or whatever you want to call it, would lend itself to an Andy Smith. Do you know? I would be Andy Smith for that week or that 2 weeks, and what is Andy Smith? He's a ball carrier. He takes men on. He's a goal threat. And then you're up against Kerry in the semi-final, and I get the Shawnee O'Shea role, do you know, and I'm shooting on sight. Do you know what I mean? I'm testing boys one-on-one. I'm trying to work as hard as I can because we know how honest he is in that when he's in that maybe front or second line from the press. And then when obviously Galway come to town, I've had a few roles at Galway because obviously they're quite top heavy. They've a lot of quality up there. You know, I could have got maybe the Comer role. I could have got the Walsh was the obvious one. You know, kicking off both legs. Like I probably didn't enjoy my football as much being trying to be Shane Walsh for 2 weeks because it was like boys were clearing space for me to try and isolate our defenders 1v1, and I'm usually there in training when you're kicking balls over the shoulder without looking, they're going wide, the boys are calling it out, but the instruction prior to that, you know, was let's go, let's shoot on sight, take your man on.
Does that not totally affect though the way, like, because you're obviously hoping to play a part in this game as well, you know what I mean? Does that not affect your own psychological preparation for a game?
I loved it. I just loved I didn't love being in the second team, but I felt that if I was carrying that Andy Smith rollout, that Sean O'Shea, and if I was giving our defence that much of a hard time kicking my 2-8s off McKay, I'm only joking. That if my form was that good, the conversation on the Wednesday and the Thursday night could have been, we need him in from the start. Do you know what I mean? And it worked both for me because it got me into form, back in the form going into the Kerry game, and also it gave the managers a bit of a headache. But the conversation I was having was that the team's not picked, and I was playing that well. I was still hoping, right up until the team was named, that I was in. And then it's doomsday. Like, it's like I'm not in, and you take your 24 hours, and then your Raiders win again come Saturday.
Because you're still disappointed to not start, but it's just, I'd be interested in your own mindset in that. Is there any admission from yourself that you were more effective? And I'm not saying you weren't, but you were more effective coming on into games. Would you have kind of admitted that internally? Like, I'm so disappointed not to play, but I might bring more by coming on in the 45th minute.
Yeah, I think there's probably two elements to it. Like, I would have seen a lot of like comments and articles and stuff written, saying that, has he got 70 minutes in his legs? You know, that type of stuff.
Cahair.
We cut this now. So there was a lot of that going on, which is, it was like, I was more than capable. Like, we were playing in-house games. It was, you know, it was a non-discussion in my head. But the thing that Geezer always was talking to me about was like, we know the damage you can do in 70 minutes. You know, there's not many defenders would probably be fit to go toe-to-toe with me physically over the 70 minutes, but when these games are going to the death, going down to the wire, going to the last 10 minutes, 5 minutes, we wanted as many leaders, we wanted as much experience on the field, and then when the games didn't open up, it just lended itself to my style that much better. And it was a case of, right, do you want to go out and score your 4 or 5 points a game as opposed to your 1 to 3? Or do you just want to win an All-Ireland?
Your style, you kind of mentioned that, and this was the thing, you know, maybe when Armagh supporters saw you getting ready to come off the bench or knew it was time, you know, you could feel like, as you mentioned earlier about maybe some players being the target of, you know, like the same abuse and can get lazy, you know what I mean? They can just get tagged with that. But with you, it was the opposite completely, because there was a complete buzz came off seeing you getting ready and what you could bring, and you seemed to really embrace that. Like, you loved it. You had that bit of Eric Cantona swagger about you, like when you come on, you know. But you know,
there were no collars on the
exactly, the extra small jersey, you know. But like you look like somebody who really revelled in those moments. Whereas that's a lot of pressure to come on and essentially be the guy who has to, you know, help take it home at that stage or potentially win the game. Like, there's an associated pressure with that, but you seem to really love that.
There's no doubt.
Theatre.
I absolutely loved like the buzz and the emotion and like the goosebumps, although maybe it wouldn't have looked like it at the time. But probably Kieran maybe would have levelled some question marks around me getting too bored in certain games, you know, against the lesser sides, and like to go from, which was true, and that's probably one regret I have maybe in my career. But when I knew I never got a bigger buzz, maybe in them last.
You needed that kind of the big focus moment kind of thing.
That's it, the clutch moment. Knowing I knew that what was coming. I knew as soon as my name was sprung, I was down warming up. Just that jog back to the dugout, taking the bib off, getting ready for the official to let me in, and look. There's no better feeling in sport knowing that the work that I had done, the teammates that I had around me, and the structures that we had in place that were to get me into a game. It wasn't like we would have had a bit of a motto like you don't go in the game to stand out, you go in to fit in, and that's we try and, you know, relay that to younger players too, rather than coming in, you know, try and, you know, take the limelight and kick scores, and then they're kicking wides and they're actually diminishing their output. But I kind of got that bit of leeway, that flexibility, that just go and do your thing. And like when you're hearing that, we know how the game, how structured it went, but to hear that from your managers, coaches, to just go and do your thing. So how could you not go into that field, confident that you were going to get the boys over the line?
And you talked about the clutch moment. Funny, I watched it back last night, just the goal in the All-Ireland final, and like, I suppose you couldn't have imagined it happening so quickly after coming onto the field, but even where you came on and where you positioned yourself in that minute, like, had you almost pre-planned that? You came out from sort of left corner forward and then took the second ball and you sort of threw McGrath a wee run, and it was like, is that going through your head when you're watching the game? Are you seeing that possibility there?
I think I was fortunate that I still don't know if he hadn't called it because I was on the field. I have to be honest, I didn't research that, but I was fortunate that it was called when I was on the field. And look, Aidan might tell you, look, he only called it because I was on the field. But could I imagine having that impact in such a short space of time? No. But as you say, when the hand goes up, when the spine goes in, because of my power and pace, I generally, if I know the ball's being ran to me, I'll go in the low cut because I'm going to be a shooter off that. But when the spine's called and I have open space to run into, then I'll go a wee bit higher. And then it was just about timing from there. It was about Aidan being able to kick that kick pass outside of Ben so that, any overcommitting defender couldn't get a hand in. It's about Ben's hand, and then I'm trying to create as much space for me, so I take McGrath inside to go out. And, a couple of solos later, I'm putting the ball across Gleeson, and that I've mentioned before, like, a lot of people have questioned whether that was a pass or, if I was going for
I was going to ask you.
a ludicrous score with my left hand. But we had done a lot of research on Gleeson, especially in that 22 game, and maybe how poor he was under high ball. Excuse me. And would I have put that ball across goal if that was a Niall Morgan? Probably not, because we seen what Niall Morgan done to Clifford, when the ball's there to be won, as most keepers do. But we would have targeted Gleeson, and we knew he was a goalkeeper that wasn't overly great, big in stature, but not overly great above his head and getting off the ground. But also, we didn't like coming off the line, like a lot of keepers in the modern game do. So again, horses for courses. If it was a thrown, if it was a carry, maybe, would I have played that ball? Maybe not.
So it's pre-programmed in a way, like you because it's Galway, you're always thinking, I can play that, even though that's running through the back of your mind somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and it's probably because it was so probably in the subconscious that obviously I'm thinking it's a Rain or an Andrew Mernon, and like if we have a goalkeeper that doesn't like coming off his line, he's definitely not going to beat these boys in the air if I can get that ball up.
Oh, you didn't know it was Mackay then?
No, I didn't know. But just to go back to give you a bit of an insight, like it might have been go far back as the Roscommon game, and it might have been more recent in terms of the carry, but Aaron Mackay would have been called out quite a bit because he wasn't, and I know he's not used personally, but a lot of the media would have had Geezer down as a defensive coach. But I can recall the night where Geezer was threatening to take Aaron out of the team because he wasn't contributing enough to the attack. So Aaron decided that he wanted to get involved in training a lot more, and he started kicking maybe at one point a night. And just due to that, running them reps and getting high up the field and getting inside the opposing 45 as opposed to always being our +1, I wouldn't say it spooked because it only happened once, but because Geezer made that point to him at 5, 6, 7 weeks previously, Aaron wanted him high up that field. But no, to answer the question, I didn't know it was Aaron. I thought it was more central players, maybe Ben, Rain or Andre. All I could see was the orange at the corner of the eye, to be honest. I didn't know who it was, but it was definitely a pass.
That's interesting though, that he, because as you said, probably McGuinney was pigeonholed for a long time, and that was why I suppose you would have seen the Donaghys and the Conleths and stuff coming in. People would have assumed it, but he obviously wanted that unpredictability to a degree.
He wasn't tracked, and maybe Kieran seen that. He seen that coming. That if we have players that don't tend to make these type of runs,
that's where the space will be.
That sort of space opens, and Andrew Mernon actually Star was big on coming out of spaces to leave spaces. the whole basketball thing. And if you watch it back, I'm sure you probably covered it before, but Andrew Murnan actually comes out of that space. They leave the space for the past to go into, and McKay was obviously the beneficiary of that.
Cahair will have watched that 27 times, by the way. You don't need to ask.
no.
It's a
Don't want to say them.
we're obviously talking about the absolute kind of zenith, the high point here, Stefan, of your Armagh days. But I did want to just look at the journey to that point to a degree, because we're eulogising here about those amazing moments, and obviously this tactical masterstroke that McGeaney maybe came about months before. There was a time years before where everything wasn't going so well. But on a personal level, for you, because you were of the same age group as the likes of Andy Murnan and Roy Grugan, guys like that, the 2009 All-Ireland minor, though, you weren't, like, your underage career didn't really catch fire in the same way. Was there a reason for that, like, or you were about that panel?
How long have you got? No, look, it probably would have been great to have joined that list of players that have won both minor and senior. But I played minor in 08. I was part of the initial squad in 09, and there was a few of us just dropped pre-Christmas. Told us, Paul McShane, Kieran Robinson, just said, you look like you've played a lot of football, you're maybe burnt out, we'll maybe take a look at you after Christmas. And to be fair, like, I done myself no favours. I was missing sessions, going to play soccer maybe instead of training, and probably could have took it or left it, at that age. But obviously, it's funny, Eugene McVerry was actually one of the lads dropped too, and like Eugene, probably one of the best minors we've had in Armagh. And I remember bumping into Kieran Robinson in the credit union one day in Loughran, and he was like, Eugene's back in the squad. Do you fancy another go with this? I think you should give Paul a ring. And being an 18-year-old who thought he knew it all, decided not to lift the phone. Sure, what's Armagh going to do this year type thing. Mm-hmm. You have all these thoughts as a young, naive lad. No, you're not even the man yet. That
the ego
that I'm honest to leave behind was at the fore back then. But no, I said to Kieran, I'm not interested. Good luck for the year. And I never lifted the phone. There was no guarantees that Paul would have took me back in, but obviously Armagh went on to have a historic year. They never lost a game all year. And you've obviously players there that you never mentioned. You Niall Rowland, you James Morgan as well. Yeah. It would have been nice to be part of that small group of players who have achieved both minor and senior as discussed. But I think it probably took me a few years to get over that. I probably blamed management, as you do. You blame everyone but yourself. But I managed to get myself back into the Armagh sort of scope, fold, under 20s. Didn't really work out for me again. And Paddy O'Rourke called me up into the senior panel. Probably ahead, wouldn't say ahead of schedule, but you'd expect a lot of the All-Ireland team would have been in before me. And I think when I went into that squad, there was only maybe Rory, maybe Gav McParland.
Yeah.
Might have been one or two others, and then it was me and Nick. So I obviously had the talent, but it was just trying to sort other areas out, I suppose.
And I mean, you mentioned there, like, it was that you could have taken or left it to a degree. Like, was that a theme in those early years of your senior career, even, like, because at that time Armagh weren't pulling up any trees. Like, there were nowhere. Probably, like, Donegal were very dominant. Monaghan were probably the second best team in Ulster at that time. We've kind of talked about where your maturity reached its peak, I suppose. In terms of accepting that role of coming on and contributing what you did. Is that wildly different to where you were then?
I think so. And like, even when I was called into the team, like, I had moments where, like, I was missing club games. I was told that I was going to be on an Armagh panel and never made the panel. And I mean, you're missing club games and not missing panels. It's
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah.
Because all you want to do at that age is play football, and you're not really seeing the bigger picture. Whereas now that's where it's probably the game's evolved a bit. Like if Kieran, if you're not in Geezer's 26 or 26 plus 4, that we maybe need the extra 4 for match day, you're released to play for the club. So it wasn't so much the case back then, especially under in Paddy's time anyway. So I was missing club games, and then there was an incident where I never went to the Armagh, one of the Armagh games. I think it was the down game. So that's a type of maybe 2011. So that's a type of maybe incidents maybe you're referring to, but with time, you see the bigger picture. It probably helped that Paul Grimley then became manager and backed me that wee bit more. Whereas Paddy probably just seen, me as a project.
Mm-hmm.
Paul was great with me. He put the arm around me. He probably understood me a wee bit more, and gave me my, Ulster debut as well. He played me in the qualifiers in 13 in Carrick and Salthill in 13, and when we met in 14, he did say to me one of our first sessions, one of the first meetings, that his biggest regret was not maybe starting me, in them qualifier games the year before, given the impact that it made. So I think that's where really, in terms of that understanding, probably maturity probably started to creep up a wee bit.
Yeah.
But that comes with probably your surroundings, the personnel that are able to understand you that wee bit better. And then Geezer was obviously on board.
Yes, with
and then took over in 15.
And you just got to that All-Ireland quarter final in 14 and took Donegal to a point, but like it didn't feel like it nearly felt like a one-off. It didn't feel like that Armagh team was suddenly in the realm of winning an All-Ireland, did it? Like, I know McGeeney came in and there was a real buzz, and then the first championship game was a bit of a disaster against Donegal.
Yeah.
And it was like it went from maybe to, oh no, we're not there, we're not near it yet.
Yeah, I think because we come off such a high the year before, especially the players that broke in, like if you go through that team, like Jamie wouldn't have played in the quarter final yet. I definitely hadn't. Like Kyle Carragher and these boys, like, don't think many of that team. You would have had to go back to maybe Stevie and them boys, Tony and Aaron would have had experience that, especially in that squad, McKeever, etc. But it was new to us, and because it happened, sort of like Geezer was obviously involved. It was Grimley was obviously manager. We thought that this could have been the start. That that balloon was soon, the air was soon released. It was popped or whatever. But it's funny because you're talking about being young and naive, and like it was. He's going to get some abuse for this in Armagh pal now, but I remember we were travelling to training, and like we'd high hopes going in that Donegal game, but it was Andy Murnan's first season, and we pulled up the training, me, Finian, Andrew, and we were discussing, not off the record, but you have these conversations in the car where like, can we keep Murphy at bay? Do you think we've the men to go toe to toe with McBrady? Have we enough firepower up top? And Andy Murran was like, we're going to beat Donegal by 8 points. I like, it was an awkward silence after. It was probably told its own story. But look, after that game, the way it worked out, it ended up a bit of a mismatch. And then from then, that's when our squad, sort of the set dwindled a bit.
The turnover, for 3 or 4 years was incredible.
You're talking Finian, Andy Mallon, the Kiernans.
Yeah. Did Charlie Vernon go?
Charlie Vernon went shortly after. And then you had younger players like Kyle Carragher and all that came in and made an impact that didn't hang about. So there was a high turnover. We lost a lot of quality, lost a lot of experience, and then
which is what you see in counties who maybe don't believe.
Yeah,
and where that they're headed somewhere necessarily. Like that's what I always took from Armagh at that stage. Like when, and we spoke about this a few weeks ago when we were sort of talking about the journey that Armagh went on from that time. Like when we used to talk to McGeeney in the McKenna Cup games, like it'd be going through a list of people like Jamie Clark and stuff, guys who just were not going to be there that year, and it seemed to be cyclical. You know what I mean? And you were just looking at it going. I don't know where this is headed, because there was no consistency, no continuity to that. Like, so is that representative of what the feeling was, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you still had the experienced heads there. You still had McKeever, you still had Donaghy, you still had Charlie up until about 16, 17 maybe.
Yeah.
And they would have still been, trying to like warp you almost, like we can get over the line. As long as as a younger player, you're probably looking at the draw thinking, can we get back-to-back Ulster wins here? And I know at that time we're thinking one win would be nice, but you're still trying to plot a route to a final, even though in hindsight we were nowhere near ready. But you still have to believe. It's probably back then, it was probably more hope than expectation. And then obviously 17 comes about and you're getting laughed out of Croke Park. You've conceded 2 goals in the first 10 or 15 minutes against Tyrone. And you're thinking, right, where are we going from here? Because we had a decent enough side out that day. We just couldn't recover from the start. And then it wasn't until, obviously, we got the show back on the road to an extent. We got a few wins under the belt in 19. And then, obviously, the belief started to, be instilled from us there, because after getting the drubbing in Croker against Tyrone and then losing against Fermanagh in 18, that was a low. But then obviously we were able to bounce back and get a couple of results, and because Mayo were quite competitive at the time, and we took them to the last kick in Castlebar, that probably lit another fire in us back then, that we were looking around the stand. We had a young squad. We had a lot of quality coming through that probably wasn't coming through in previous years. So then it's up to us. That's it. We didn't have as many negative conversations back then. In 19, 20, 21, we knew something was coming.
But in the years before that, in those couple of years before that, I wonder, like, would you, because obviously there's a lot of outside noise, and probably there was, like, obviously until he's won the All Ireland, there would have been a lot of outside noise about McGeeney, and was he, the right man in his time, how many years he'd been there and so forth. From a player's perspective, inside that group, would there have been any conversations, like when you were maybe going, I think it was 4 or 5 years without winning a game in Ulster, and maybe spent a lot of time playing Division 3 football, that kind of thing? Like, would there have been conversations going, is he the right man? Are we going the right way, or was the trust there in him implicitly?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think the probably, we were in Division 3 for a start. We spent a year in Division 2. We went back down Division 3, and we knew deep down that how can we compete here? So it was almost like we were blaming ourselves, and obviously we were trying to have the conversations that this is, you're going back to the word project again, this is not going to happen overnight. Now, a lot of us who were maybe involved hadn't been coached by a manager like Kieran before, and his methods, how intense he could have been. But I think deep down we knew that if we could just ride this out, get out of Division 3, somehow get up into Division 1, that the keep us putting a serious management team together. We were getting more experienced. I came in as maybe a 21-year-old playing championship, 21, 22, coming up to like those 17, 18, 19, a lot of games under my belt. Rory was the same, Aidan was the same. We were getting younger players through. There was no stage in that time, and around that time did I ever doubt that Kieran was the problem. I think we were just struggling with player availability. We probably didn't get the best players out in around that time. Players were stepping away, players were retiring, legends of Armagh, and it probably took us a while just to get that back on the road.
And like that pressure never relented properly. It's an evening I'd be really interested to hear about, the evening that the vote happened in 23, and the clubs were voting on whether to keep McGeeney in place. And I know there would have been certain players would have made sort of representations to their own clubs, like, we want to keep this man, don't dare vote against him, kind of thing. But it's just like, nearly where were you that evening, and would you have been how aware of that happening, and how scared of him being let go were you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure on the evening before, I was on holidays, and my own secretary from Clan Gael literally phoned me and was like, "What are you thinking here?" And I'm like, "Does it need to be said?" And he says, "What about Shane? I can't get through to him." And I goes without saying here, like, there's only one man for it, and it was probably disappointing that there were some clubs thought otherwise, but in our heads, there was no. Imagine if the outcome would have been different, and we'd been talking about the whole Kildare scenario here.
Was there ever a point at which you thought or was there ever a worry that amongst the players that he might at some point go, "I don't need this," because it got nasty at points?
It did. It got nasty. It got personal, and probably the fear was that, from a player's perspective, that Kieran was going to be the one to walk, because there was a lot of hate online. There was tweets directed to family.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of, as you say, there was a lot of hatred online, and where that stemmed from, like, I don't know, because we haven't seen too many men like him in our sport. Just generally don't know where people came from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably just how society went as a whole, maybe over the last 5, 6, 10 years, that people without a voice
Suddenly had one.
Yeah. Given how social media has become, or sorry, prevalent it's became in all our lives. But no, it did get ugly, and just to back that up, like, I think the fear would have been from us that Kieran would have had enough, as opposed to maybe being voted out.
I just wanted to finish up, Stefan, obviously talking about, we've kind of straddled the two probably different eras then, as you said, the early years where Armagh were quite a way off when you think of like where the Donegals and Dublins were, and to be an All-Ireland champions. But for you, there was a personal, you mentioned that defeat to Tyrone in 2017, huge day, and you decided that day to walk away from the panel, but it wasn't just football. Obviously, you've spoken publicly about your gambling addiction at different times, but you've also said that decision to stay, to walk away then and take 2018 out, you wouldn't be sitting here with an All-Ireland medal had you not made that decision, because at that point, you didn't know where you were headed, but you just knew that you didn't want to be part of that anymore. Can you tell us a bit about what impact that all was having on you, as a person, and also why you reached that decision?
Yeah, it was a heavy, probably 4 or 5 years for me leading into that game in 17, and it wasn't a rash decision after the game. But that game would have been maybe July time, but
yeah.
It wasn't until I met Paddy McKeever in Loughran in the winter, and I just didn't mentally and physically, I just didn't feel ready to go and commit to what was needed, and I made the decision to step away pre-Christmas. Was playing a bit of soccer for Celtic as well, and the summer came, and an offer came, to go over and spend the summer in New York. And it was in around that time where I was just thinking that I need to go and try something again, because of how heavily involved, how much that the gambling was weighing me down, how much of an impact it was having on me as a person, a father, a son, and also the footballer. I do think I probably lost a bit as a player in round, especially development wise. It probably.
In what respect? Does it change your approach to playing
not so
football?
Much your approach, but like you're not as present. You're not going kicking on your own. You basically, you want to be on your own, but you're on your phone. Your focus is elsewhere. And without all that going on, could I ended up a better footballer? Absolutely, I think so. But thankfully, I made the decision that summer to go and spend time in New York. The thinking was that over there I didn't have any access to any gambling apps, whatever. I was on record before saying that it almost worked out for me in 2015.
15 was it?
15, yeah. And
Did you stay with people? Like, did you whenever you went out to New York? Like, you say you've no access, but access wouldn't be hard to get, I
Yeah.
suppose, if you want to. Like, so were you staying with people who were maybe helping you along that way, or what, or how did that?
no one would have. I was at an apartment on my own in
Right.
Times Square, so there was no one. There was no real network locally, and I think that's what my mum and dad were worried about at the time. Probably worried if I was going to come home, because how often the expats go out and remain out there out for a holiday. But look, I made the decision to go out and try and figure this out in my own head once for all. And probably the danger came when I returned, having all that accessibility to the shops, the apps again, without the VPNs and all that type of stuff. I had a couple of tough conversations that I've on the record before saying with mum and dad. They were offering the professional help. Hugh Campbell was great in that as well. But there was just something that clicked with me in New York that summer, that I just wanted to win this battle on my own. Because obviously I was a young father. I am a young father. She was obviously at the forefront of my mind, thinking I can't go on like this. So that would have been my driver. And obviously once the winter was coming around again, and there was talk of the squad coming back together, and I reached out to Geezer, and look, he understood me more than most. I think that's why we connected, and I was able to perform for him and get to the level that he did. Like, he didn't want me to come on board unless if I was telling more lies just to get back in. But I reassured him that it was in the past. Then that's when I had the network around me and my family were more comfortable, because I would have been probably only 6, 7, 8 months into this that I had maybe been previously and relapsed. But the best thing I'd done was obviously reached out to Kieran and met him a couple of times, met Hugh a couple of times, got a lot of things off my chest that I'd never really said, not publicly, but in conversation, that just lifted such a weight off me. And I went back into that 19 season, and I think I actually got man of match against Antrim, in my first game in the McKenna Cup down in Crumlin. So that gave me a lot of confidence that even though I got the year out, had a really good year in the end up. But I'm adamant that if I didn't take that season to myself, I probably would have retired. I probably would have retired a year or two later. Playing against my will, playing against with the struggles. Whereas just giving me that, I come back with like that new lease of life, weight off the shoulder, and I was able to go and probably go down another couple of levels that I did sort of in my second part of my career.
Yeah.
You mentioned obviously it changed your path as a footballer, but how does it change you as a person?
I think when you're struggling with something as sinister or as addiction as gambling, it's the one thing where it's like it's hidden. Nobody knows. It's a wee bit different to the drugs and the alcohol. It can have an impact on you, aesthetically, but it changes you as a person, because I was brought up well. The one thing my family would have stood by would have been honesty, and I couldn't have reflected that any worse, for a period of time. And comes with that comes the lies, the deceit, the everything, that who I was as a person. I was unrecognisable, as I've said on record before. But you coming back, it just gives you a realisation, that people can have their struggles, people can change, but deep down everybody knew there was a good person there. I knew, I didn't turn, into a compulsive liar or whatever overnight, but just to answer the question, it took time. It took a few tough conversations. The odd look in the mirror helped, but I was able to come out, in around that sort of 18, 19, end of that year, going into the 19 season as a far better person than when I left in the latter stages of 17.
And that really was the catalyst, really, for everything that followed. I mean, you mentioned earlier the Mayo game in Castlebar. Myself and Andy were both down at that, and it was one of those nights where you sort of went. I suppose there had been a couple of false dawns with Armagh, in the years that followed, but that was the first one where you sort of went, okay, maybe there is something here to really work with. And obviously that night, Kieran Donaghy was working with Sky, covering the match, and happened to be staying in the same hotel as you guys in Castlebar and Westport, maybe was it? And one thing led to another, and next thing you know, he was he was involved the following year. And that, I mean, he seemed like somebody, again, spoke earlier on about the personality that you brought onto the field as well. But Donaghy's somebody I would associate with that, like had that, obviously he's larger than life in a physical sense, but he's somebody who just brought so much more, it's just so much personality to the field. And that seemed to take you to another level as well.
We were probably, look, I always loved like the attention of coming on and kicking the big scores, and but he was sort of that driving force in behind the scenes. You need to start getting it to the crowd, that was Donaghy. He done it himself. He's like,
did it to Armagh? He did it to Armagh.
I love you out
Paul
there.
Hardy.
Paul Hardy.
That was brilliant that day.
They absolutely love you out there. You need to
tap into that.
And Turbo and the boys would always wind me up. They'd be throwing me waves there after games and all.
Favourite song.
Thinking I'm waving the Maria in the crowd and all. That's the type of stuff I was listening to. But no, Kieran was great with me. I was delighted that he came on board. There's not a lot that hasn't been said about the big star. That I had some great times with him, but he definitely made a huge difference to us. Just that energy. He probably it's hard to say he's underrated as a coach, but because he has such a personality, I think sometimes that overrides what he done to us on the training field as well.
People maybe just see this
See him as a personality as opposed to a great coach.
To give you an example, see if you go back through a highlight reel, not the scores, but let's say somebody TikTok there put a highlight reel together. I'd have got blocked down a lot. Years ago, I'd have kicking ball under pressure in the air. And Star would have been that one that it took me, in the first month or two that we'd met, it was like, you need to learn how to kick a ball under pressure. You're like, and it's the basics. It's like, it's head down. Where he noticed before he came to Armagh that I have a tendency to lean back when I'm kicking under pressure, and which resulted in a lot of my balls maybe going up in the air, dropping short, too much hang time. And then I suppose in that second part of my career when he did come on board, I wouldn't have been putting, we talk about hang time, all that type of stuff, wouldn't have been putting balls into the clouds just as much. I'd have been kicking through a ball. As
your technique, basically, you changed your technique.
Would have changed, would have kicked my posture, changed my posture, sorry. And so there was them wee things there. Obviously he would have been huge into the basketball element, up the backdoor cuts, the screens and all that. But just the timing of the way Gaelic was going and the way he was able to settle into our squad was perfect. It was a lovely blend of basketball IQ, Gaelic IQ, which a lot of our big scores would have came from over the years.
Brilliant. And just finally, we'll finish 2024. I just want to ask, when you look back now, a couple of years on, is there any one moment that sticks with you about that year or that day or anything? Is there anything in particular that kind of overrides everything? I know you spoke about, the players on the pitch afterwards. Obviously, there was no crowds or anything allowed on that day. But is there anything from that day or that journey that in particular just means something a bit different?
Probably just on the day, we all have dreams and aspirations of winning these big trophies, Sam Maguire's, Ulsters, whatever, but I had always imagined that I'd been run about like an absolute, maniac, and just looking back, not being able to remember what I'd done, because you're so manic and the adrenaline's going, but just you don't know how you're going to react until that whistle goes, and for some reason you just dropped. I just dropped to the floor, which I have never ever seen myself or envisioned myself doing that before. But on reflection, it was sheer relief that we go back to that paranoia, from earlier. Us boys thought we were maybe the problem. We were getting too old. Were we good enough? And the fact that we were able to, well, their boys are still going now. The Grugans, the Falkers are all still, hopefully they're able to back it up. But we would have been talking about, are we going to retire without winning anything? And I think that's maybe where that emotion,
Was a weight off
there
to
was a
some
weight
degree?
off, and you're just dropping. And by the time you get off the floor, obviously you're surrounded again when the media's around you. And I've said before in a previous interview, like, when you're walking around the hill, I had 2 nephews who were down on the cage and they're bawling their eyes out. And I never actually got to see my daughter until we done the lap. We come round the Cusack and we come back round to the Hogan, and then that's when seeing Ella, Maria, my dad, John, brother Anthony, and like, you will never ever, no matter what happens to me in my life, you just will never ever be able to relive it. One, but never be able to forget it. It was insane. It was hard. It's still hard to put into words, but just the fact that we can just be proud of where that group, I know a lot of them still going, but we can all be proud of what we achieved.
Stefan, thank you very much. That's brilliant. I appreciate you've probably got dry mouth syndrome now, like I have as well. I've sitting talking for the last hour. No, I'm
just
saying I do.
thinking Neil's wondering what TikTok is.
I have yet to get on it. I've yet to get on it. But no, Stefan, thanks very much for joining us this week. Great to hear your story, and look forward to having you in the next weeks and months ahead. Okay, that wraps up another Monday Club. Thank you very much to our sponsor, Find Insurance, your local commercial insurance broker. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to the podcast, and we will be back for more next week.